All right, it is 7 p.m. and we're back in open session for the CCSD59 Board of Education meeting. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Our next agenda item, I should say, is a presentation from the mayor of Elk Grove Village on the DARE program. Green light on, yeah.
Notice. Thank you. I'm not on a shot clock anymore, right? Am I good?
You're on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. First off, on behalf of the community, I want to thank this board. Your new rule about cell phones in lockers when they arrive, not to be used until they leave. I commend you. My board commends you. The community commends you for that. I cannot tell you how many parents have reached out and said, Mayor, I said, don't thank me. Come thank District 59. I think that's a great step you made with the young people and all the things that can go on with that. So on behalf of the community, I say thank you for that decision and for doing that with the cell phones and the young people. Appreciate it. I'm here tonight to talk about a couple quick items if I can. As you know, we have a DARE program here in Oak Grove, and Grove Junior High has that as part of their program at the school. I want to thank you for that. A lot of my fellow mayors back during the last recession, the Great Recession, looking to save money, cut out programs, and unfortunately, a lot of towns cut out DARE programs. We feel very strongly in the DARE program as far as what it does for the young people of this community and what it does actually for schools. It's a great partnership interaction in a positive way. There is a positive interaction between the police and young people. Far too many times, even as adults, when we have police interactions, it can be kind of a negative situation. We had through a stop sign, speeding a little bit too fast, or you had an incident at your house, they had a call for security and stuff like that from the police. It's nice to have these people interacting with the young people at an early age in a positive way, talking to them, mentoring them, giving them ideas, and also helping them make smart choices as they go on. We all know we actually are starting to see this down at young age, grade school age kids, that the pressures, the decisions they make are getting earlier in life. And that's why we're so happy that we can use this to help get them hopefully start on a path of doing the right decisions as they go forward. The reason I'm here tonight is getting a little despondent. I've been talking to our dear officer, Officer Malik, who's been doing it for over 10 years now, very well knowledge, very seasoned in that area. And he's talking about a little bit of frustration he's having. When, for many years, they were an 8-week program of DARE in your schools. And he would meet each individual class. So it's about 30 students or so, maybe a little less. He would meet with once a week for 8 weeks. And that was a very important aspect of the program. And the reason that's important is he had much more one-on-one interaction with the students. As you know, the more you have, the less interaction you have one-on-one with the students. When you have a class of 30 and you're there for 8 weeks, you get an awful lot of interaction, talking to, knowledge, and almost becoming a friendship. I'm sure, Tia, you probably remember your dear Officer Friendly, they used to call it, from your school days when you were back in Grove Junior High. So that's very important to us. And we saw a lot of results from that. Our youth officers watch items, what goes on, numbers, and incidents. And they were going very well. And it was for a whole class period. He said usually back then it was like 30, 35 minutes. And that was important. The problem they're having, his frustration is we've changed that, or the school has changed that. Now they meet with usually as many as 2 or 3 classes, up to 90 kids at a time. The amount of time they're together has now gotten short, is sometimes 20 to 25 minutes, and they only meet 6 times. And they usually meet in the library, the gymnasium, or he called some kind of utility room. I'm not familiar. I doubt it's like where your heaters are, but he said some kind of utility room that you have for different events and stuff like that. So I'm here today, and I understand, he said he understands, he explained there's testing and other things going on that are drawing the kids a lot of ways. I understand that, and I know it's not easy. I was a former teacher myself, so I know what goes on. But I want to emphasize and ask again if we can maybe find a little more middle ground where we're at, because he's feeling frustrated in the fact that he's not getting the same kind of interaction, knowledge with the young people that he used to get, and that's important, because young students, they talk, and as they get to know people, they talk more. And as we all know, knowledge is power. And it's also power for the police department to hear things, they understand things, and they hear things in advance sometimes. And that can be very important. And because it's amazing how kids can bond with police officers in a positive way, because at that young age, they really haven't had much negative interaction with them. So it's a positive, oh, policeman, look at the uniform, very proud, very happy, very excited about that. And that can be very good as you go down the road, not just in sixth grade, but in eighth grade, sophomore year of high school, senior year of high school. Our former dear officers said they have interaction with kids sometimes 10, 15 years after they had them in sixth grade. And so they've created that bond. But again, that bond only comes to fruition when you have more close interaction with them. So if there's a way you can review, discuss, look at other ways to maybe get closer to what we used to have, that would be greatly appreciated on behalf of the community and the village on that. The second thing why I'm here is I appreciate we started the SRO program last year, and I'm glad to see that it's continuing on to this year. And I think Holmes Junior High, I think, is now going into the program, and hopefully down the road, Friendship will work on that. My question is this to the board, is I'd like to propose to you something that my board and I have been talking about now probably for over a year. And as we started off with the Grove Junior High SRO officer, which is a great first step. We thank you for that, and we're great for the partnership that's going on. But we've always had the vision down the road of expand that into as low as the grade schools. And here's our thought on this, and it's something we can discuss further, go back and forth more if you want to. You have 5 grade schools in Elk Grove, which actually works out perfectly. I believe it's Bird, Rupley, Claremont, Ridge, and Salt Creek. Am I correct? That's the 5 within Elk Grove? Okay. Our hope was that we could assign or have an SRO officer that would spend 1 day a week in each school. So maybe Mondays are Bird, Tuesdays Rupley, and so on down the path. We feel this time, everyone feels comfortable. It's not like the need that the junior high has to have them there every day of the week. But it is a great way to start interactions at a young age and also provides assistance partnerships with the district and the grade school level. We know for a fact, studies have shown, police records have shown, and all the rest, that the earlier you start that interaction, the more success you have down the road. And so by having something of that nature at an earlier age, which is grade school, could be very positive for everyone involved. So our hope is that is something you will consider. Not saying it can start right away this school year, maybe partway through like we did last year with that. But we are more than willing to sit down and talk with you, discuss this with you, because we feel that would be a very big first step moving forward, working with young people as they go on. And we think that'd be a positive image to everyone involved. And it's going well. Just so you know, Elk Grove High School has been asking us down for some time. They'd like to have a secondary officer at the Elk Grove High School here. It's something we're going to be looking at further with them on that. So we'll find all the thing here. And again, I think you saw with your year's experience, almost a whole school year experience, the officer is not a security man. He's there to offer assistance in a wide variety of areas. And, we think it's gone very well. I know Officer Promise, who's the SRO at Grove Junior High, speaks fairly highly of the interactions he's been having, the work he's been doing. And I know he's talked that the administration at the school itself has been very well received and very positive in the perspective of what's happened. So it's something I just want to bring to you tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to come speak to you today. And you may not have any now, but if there's any quick questions I could answer for you may have now. I know it's kind of threw this on you out of nowhere, so glad to answer for you.
Hi, Marion. Thank you for coming to talk to us. I have a couple of questions. First, let me start with the DARE program. I never had that experience because I am an immigrant. I came to the U.S. in high school, but I'm curious. Did you hear anything from the community? What is the community thinks about the DARE program? Is there an appetite to expand it? what is your take for when you're talking to the community members?
The DARE program has been a huge success in Elk Grove. We do it in District 54 at Meade Junior High. We also do it here at in Grove Junior High. What they like is, what we've always had feedback on is the parents all think of back, well, a lot of parents nowadays, because they're younger, I'm getting old, remember it as DARE. But a lot of parents, when I was young, it was called the Officer Friendly program. Officer Friendly come to school. And like I say, TR, do you remember, I'm not sure if it was DARE or Officer, who was it? Froelich. And Tom's been retired for years, but he's still, 24 years ago, he still remembers, and so parents like it a lot because it's a positive interaction with kids, and it's also teaching kids the fears. Used to always be say no to drugs was a big thing back in the 80s and stuff like that. Now it's far more than that. It's cyberbullying. It's technology, cell phone use, taking pictures, all that. They teach far more than, they still teach about drugs and smoking and drinking. That's still a big part of it. But they help them on areas that are now, as societies change, the DARE program change. Cyberbullying is one of the biggest problems that exists. As I'm sure you probably know better than I do out there. Officers can help on that. They work on that. They work on, again, technology, cell phone, proper use, taking pictures. One of the big things officers tell us is how people take wrong pictures. Kids, especially young kids, take them in bathrooms, locker rooms and stuff. They think it's funny. So officers talk about that too. But the biggest thing on that, why it's important, is it also teaches young people they can talk to police officers. They are there to work with them. They're there to be friends. They're not there to be pounding on them flaws. They're there to be helpful to them. And it's great if you can grab at a young age to introduce them to that philosophy, because far too many kids don't see police until they're too old or when they have an issue. And that's one of the reasons we want the SRO, because that injects now into the grade school level that's a positive partnership with the police, not a negative. So that's why DARE is very well received. Like I say, a lot of towns that did stop it 15 years ago during the recession are now bringing it back. They're now introducing it again because they feel they've missed out an opportunity to work with the young people of the community.
Makes sense. And I mean, I see the positives of it.
And the good thing is, DARE doesn't cost the schools anything. We fully pay the whole cost.
So that answers my second question.
Yeah, our officers, and in the DARE part, we cover all the costs to it. It's something we want to provide as a service to the community. So that's not something we ask for any help on. Like the SRO is a different partnership. DARE is no cost to the schools. Okay. And all the material comes from the police officers, not from the schools.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, I had a question. Where I work, we start in 5th grade with DARE. Would that be something that, is there data that 5th grade compared to 6th grade, cyberbullying and all that happens earlier?
Well, 6 has always been the benchmark of where it starts. I know it's kind of hard because in Stevenson and Link, they go through 6th grade at elementary school. Then here we start 6th grade at junior high school. So, and QR 6th grade is part of the whole school because they go all the way through. We have found, our police, I know, because we've talked about this in the past, our police have talked that, you're right, kids are much sharper, more brought into the world of modern issues at a much younger age, 3rd grade, 4th grade. So that's why our thought was, we like keeping it at 6th grade. We found that level has been comfortable as far as maturity levels and the rest with them. But that's why we think the SRO program could now offer us a little more work with the younger, all the way down to kindergarten students. And the great thing about that is kindergarten, 1st grade, because you're part of it, those kids are so fresh, excited to be part of school and be that. What a perfect time to start working with them at the youngest age possible, to give them right direction and good views at that age. So that's why we think the SRO can kind of be a quasi DARE and the SRO program we have the old, because the issues are going to face at a younger age, and we know it's going to take some special training because the SROs were first always trained for high school level, right. And now junior highs have different issues than high school kids. If we go to the grade school level, they're going to have to be trained a little bit differently because grade school kids aren't the same as junior high kids. So, and that's what we hope to do. And I'm sure it's going to be more of a positive interaction, talking about, whatever. I'm not sure how many grade school kids have cell phones, but positive interaction. I'm sure they're on computers though. Oh, yeah. So that's why we think they almost be like a quasi SRO DARE person in a school when they're there that day, and may evolve that. I mean, being this is the first time we would do something like that, it's just like you would, we'd be open to suggestions from the school district saying, hey, besides doing your normal SRO, could once a week when you come in, maybe the first 2 hours, you meet with a couple classes here, next week a couple other classes. Wouldn't have to be as intense as what the DARE does when in that short period of time, but since they're all year, they could expand what they would do with you. That we'd be more than open, because again, this would be new to us also. So we're very receptive and open to the idea of what you want to do.
Great, thank you.
Heather?
Is there any data that shows SRO? I mean, you mentioned there is, but could you share data showing SROs at the early age, the impacts and
That I don't have readily available. I'm sure officers, as they put together, if this is something you want to pursue further, that's what I'm saying. We're not looking to start this in August when you open. But if this is something you want to pursue further, we're more than happy to sit down, get all the information, and work with your administration or whatever you want to kind of, formulate, almost put together the program we'd like to do. So we'll be receptive to that, because this is new for us too. SRO on the high school, down junior high, was a pretty easy trend. It's very close to the same. There's not much modifications. But now we're going down younger students. We'll be open to working with you and your administration as far as how is best to make it work and work for the young people. Again, this is new to us too.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
If I can, when we were going through the SRO planning phase, my understanding was from the SROs themselves that they were interested in the SRO at the junior high going out to the schools that feed into that junior high and acting as officer friendly, so that the person who's at that junior high would be the same person that they would see in 5th grade, so that when they then matriculate into 6th grade, they would have an adult that they know in that building. My understanding is that was the plan, not that there would be a separate officer.
And that's something the board discussed at length as the school year went on last year. The view of him trying, Officer Promise being at Grove Junior High, doing all those things, and then trying to truly interact at a grade school level, we think would be too much work, too much burden. We think it's better off to actually have someone dedicated to rotate the 5 days a week and actually spending a day a week there, taking away time they would have been at Grove Junior High, a day a week there, and still keep Officer Promise at Grove on a daily basis. The kids adjusting would not be, they adjust teachers every year. They get a teacher they know in 1st grade, they get the same teacher there. They'll be able to work with Officer Promise once they get from 5th to 6th grade. One, they're more mature. And two, Officer Promise will reach out and work with them just like they do now when they come to Grove Junior High. For the beginning of this year, be new 6th grade kids coming in there from grade school. The 7th, 8th graders, no Officer Promise from last year. The new ones will be able to acclimate to them the same way too. So we don't think that'd be a problem at all and something like that.
No, but I think it was an advantage of, if I'm a 5th grade student and I've had interactions with this officer and I go to junior high as a 6th grader and now I have issues, I have a trusted adult that I've met with prior to that.
And they still can reach out to them.
Right.
Yeah, they'll never give up.
I want to reiterate, this was sold during the SRO program as something that was the right way to do it.
Right. And the feeling is after the interaction,
I mean, that's a
the
feeling.
SRO Grove Junior High is busier than we expected. The issues being faced are more than we expected. And so having the SRO officer there on a continuous basis, his time is better spent that way. And to interact now with the younger people, an additional SRO officer, we feel would be the best way to approach it. And trying to divide amongst 6 schools on a continuous basis, because again, just like with the DARE program, an SRO officer that pops by once a month, with that, what do you average grade schools, 300 to 400 students in ballpark? To have an SRO officer try to interact with and get like you said, the connection you're talking about with that many students, maybe once a month, would not be very, very accessible. Whereas if you have one there on a weekly basis, the kids get to see him every time, they get to know him better, they trust him a little more. The best way to get people to work together is when they're more comfortable. The more they see an officer, the more they work with an officer, the more they talk to him, the more comfortable they'll be, and the more open they become. And that is why that's what I'm saying. That's why the DARE officer He gets frustrated because his time with them is shrink. One-on-one interaction is less because there's bigger classes, less time with them. That's one reason we're asking him to give back more, because he didn't get that same interaction he used to get with them. And that's why I thought is by having a SRO officer, they'll have that time frame, they'll have that interaction that they need to be successful. That's the key, especially young people. They are nervous to trust people. And time and knowledge and comfort with them by being with them opens it up far more. And it's particularly with the situation we face in our schools, that's, we think, very critical, because some students go home to a life that's far different than any of us ever go home to or ever did. And that's why this interaction could be such a positive step at a young age with these students. We really think that. And our officers learned an awful lot about the living environments in the past year at Grove, far more than I think they ever even imagined. And that's why it's been so, and that's why I commend the board for keeping that going. That's been a huge step, not only for the young people, but for the community and for the school, what we've done. A huge step has been taken on that.
And to that point, so if this is a program that benefits the community as a whole and improves students outside of school, and it's an initiative that the police department feels is valuable, why is it not part of the police budget?
It is part of the police budget. We pay 1/4 of the cost. You pay 3/4, we pay 1/4 of the cost of the SRO.
That's because they're not working for us in the summer.
Right, so when they're in there on
But
that.
you had proposed last summer that you would look into financing for this program. Have you done so?
The financing, we've never worked.
Yes, you did. You wrote
I
me a
said
letter
that?
and you said, I would be interested in looking into financing for this. Did you pursue that?
We are financing.
You are not paying for the SRO. So you're saying
pay
the
1/4
district
of the
is going
SRO.
to pay for the SRO.
Pardon?
You're saying the district should pay for 2 SROs now.
Right, 3/4 of their salary. We pay
Yes.
1/4.
We are paying for the 3/4 of the year
Right.
that they work in our school.
And we pay for 1/4 when they're out of the school. Right,
Right, when they're working for you.
right.
Right. But if this is that big of a benefit community-wise, if this is community policing, if we're getting this, schools are being used to help reduce crime and reduce issues outside of schools, shouldn't that be part of the police budget?
No. I disagree with that. This is helping the school more than it's helping even our community. It's making your schools a much more, I want to be careful I say, not knowing who's here, it's making your schools much more student-friendly than what existed before. And we know that for a fact, and you know that for a fact. No question. No question. I've seen the numbers, I've seen the issues, I've seen the incidents, I've seen them all. It's been much better learning environment at Grove Junior High than existed before. You know that, and I know that.
I can agree with that. But again, my concern is, if this is police work, why is it not part of the police budget? Why is it?
It
part
is
of
to
the
a
school?
degree, but we train the officer for the SRO. We pay for all the training. We hire the officer. We train the officer. We do all that expense, which is an awful lot of expense. But the benefit truly is benefiting directly the school. And the offshoot of that is directing and helping the community. But the main benefactor has been the school, no question. Grove Junior High is far different this year coming up than it was a year ago at this time. And we all know that.
Agree to disagree. I agree about that. I disagree about where this money should be spent from.
We can agree to disagree on that. And I respect that, Doctor. I respect that. Any other questions?
Anything else? Sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. President. I'm sorry.
Do we have any, I think I remember like in August last year, we did like our safety committee meeting. So maybe we can discuss that then when we have it this year. But either the expansion of the DARE program. I think it kind of all goes together with, I'm glad they do cell phone stuff because it kind of links into the new cell phone policy. So I think we can definitely look into it more. And thank you for coming. I had no idea what you were going to talk about, so I appreciate it.
No, I know.
I appreciate it.
No, I felt I should be the same with everyone that's here.
Yeah.
No offense, TR. I mean, I'm Mr. President. I just think it's a way to do it and stuff like that. And if I may, I don't mean to interject, Doctor, if I can, go back. Like there, we do pay all the cost of that. That's fully funded by the village. And, some things we do. I understand
Under
where
the
you're coming.
philosophy that it benefits by reducing crime outside the schools.
I don't
Same
want to say,
logic,
I don't say
SRO.
Grove Giants producing criminals. I don't want to say that.
No, but it's reducing,
I know
it's
I know.
reducing incidents that cause issues further down the line.
Yes.
And I would say by the exact same extension, SRO program is identical.
And I'll tell you what, Doctor, I'll do is if this is something you want to pursue further, I will go back to my board and see what we can do. I'm serious. Let me go back because I feel that strongly about it. I think it really can make a difference all the way around. I'd be willing to go back to my board, whether we maybe go to a 50-50 split instead of a 75-25, maybe 50-50. But I feel so strongly about this issue, and I think my trustees do too, that we will look at adjusting, maybe even more so. I'll see. Because I do feel that strongly about it. Because the reports I saw, and obviously I'm not going to discuss in public, but the reports I saw, the issues I saw, the incidents I saw, all that, it's amazing the difference that's happened. And it's amazing the feedback I've gotten from parents. I know you get feedback too, but usually in the community, a mayor hears everything and hears it many times over. Whether I'm walking in Jewel, I'm walking at a concert, I'm walking somewhere. I can't tell you the number of comments I heard. And it was very, very well received at Grove Junior High. Very well received with parents. And I'll say this as we're talking, so much so that I had a mother come up to me back in January and said for the first time her daughter went to the bathroom at Grove Junior High School. This young girl's in 7th grade. She obviously had female issues. She never would go to the bathroom. She would never go. Never went. And she goes, my daughter now goes to the bathroom at Grove Junior High. That's what hit me. That's when we started talking about maybe looking at other things. And so that is why I feel very strongly on this. And if that's an avenue I need to take to maybe make this happen, I'm receptive to work on it because that's how strongly I feel about this. And, again, we want what's best for you, all of us. And I know you folks are more dear to schools than I am with your involvement. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for willing to maybe look at more further because that's important for us. So, okay. So then, Mr. President, you'll reach back to me as far as what next steps you want to take.
Sure. Yeah,
More
well,
discussion between staff, whatever.
Yep.
Just let me know, and we'll be more than happy to go from there.
got it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Quick question or request related. I know in the past we discussed some sort of an audit or not necessarily audit, a review of how the SRO program is going in Grove since that's implemented. Can we get something so we'll see the progress before we even start talking about any expansion?
Sure. Did you share a summary before?
Yes, we shared a report on all SRO programming in the district in a weekly update.
Okay.
I can reshare that.
Yeah, can you just reshare via email?
Thank you.
All right, so item 4.0, comments and suggestions from the public. Who was signed up? Anybody else here tonight wish to address the board? If not, we can move on to the superintendent reports, 5.01 FOIA requests.
Since the last report to the Board of Education, there has not been any FOIA requests.
All right, thank you. Then 5.02, Mr. Luloff, spring benchmark presentation.
Good evening. Thank you very much. We are at that time of year where we annually share our end of year benchmark report. As we've kind of every time we bring this report to the table, try to find different ways to share Since we've already shared the report and it'll go out with this in the board packet, we'll just highlight a few different pieces of slides. I did want to introduce a couple members of the accountability and assessment team right behind me. And walking in is Corey King. Corey's the coordinator of data and assessment systems, and sitting next to Corey is Tricia Senni. She's the coordinator of assessment and MTSS. So all of this data, they're a huge part of the analysis, organizing, making all of this happen. And they're here tonight. We can always call them up if we need them. Okay, so here we go. So I just wanted those pieces that we're going to highlight tonight are really kind of some key targets that we have as a district. So back in 2019 with the strategic plan, the board set the KPI, key performance indicator, at 80%. So we're looking for all students, at least 80% of our students to fall in the 25th percentile or above on iReady reading and math. On the achievement side, we're really, especially working with iReady, looking at that, we want to compare as well or better to the iReady national averages. That's up to about 6 million kids in reading and math each. On the growth side, iReady has some typical and stretch growth targets. We want to meet or exceed those. On the intervention side, we want to gain at least a minimum of 4 percentile points in reading and math as for individual kids and as a system. And sense of belonging, we want to fall at or above the national averages. So when we talk about the KPI, over time, this is a really nice slide to just show where we started, 3 years ago, kind of the first real school year post-COVID, fall of 21-22. Blue is math, green is reading. You can see we're finishing off here this spring with math at 70% of our students are meeting or exceeding that 25th percentile, and 68.7% in reading. The 2.9, that's the growth from fall to spring for math, and the 2.1 is the growth from fall to spring for reading. So over time, you can see we've made a lot of progress on this path. One interesting piece in this next slide, as we've been talking about this, one thing we're realizing, especially the last few years with newcomers and everything that goes with kids coming in and out of the system, we tried to look at, okay, well, what does it look like for kids who are with us for the last 3 years? So basically it'd be 2nd through 8th grade students who have been with us since the fall of 21-22. That's that top line. So you can see we started ahead. This is reading, and you could see we continued that path. They very much mirror each other, but the reality is, we believe and we know the longer we have kids in our system, our teachers, our kids, our families, our staff, our leaders do a pretty darn good job. So we're really starting to approach that 80% of students at the 25th percentile. Did the same for math. So again, here's math, all kids. Here's math. The 3-year cohort is what I'm calling it. It's about 3,400 kids who have been with us and made that progress over time.
Good question on the,
Yes.
on the data. I like how it's presented. For those past 3 charts, do we have a more historical data to compare?
We can, so we started with iReady during the pandemic, just with math, and it wasn't all kids, and we didn't have it for reading. So when we really look at this is that pocket of data. I think we could go back 1 year for math and pull that together. Reading, we don't have a comparable, but we can certainly do that. Okay. So this slide, I pulled this out of the report to highlight a couple things. So one, I always appreciate this slide because basically all of our kids are going to fall into one of these categories or not. You're going to be free and reduced or not. You're going to be male or female. You're going to be a multilingual or not. And they just want to highlight a couple things. So when we talk multilingual, Dr. Sager had a good question. Good question. And who makes up the former multilingual group? So that would be any English learner, dual language Spanish, dual language Polish, ESL, who have exited the program. So they took access, they passed out of access, they got a 4.8. Or students whose family said, we qualify, we deny services, we don't want to be in the program. And that can happen at any time. Students can exit in kindergarten, they can exit in 8th grade. We're up to about 640 kids, 41 who are in that group. That former they're also in the multilingual no, because they now are no longer multilingual.
Yeah,
Yes.
and the point of that question, sorry, Corey, I torture poor Corey by sending these questions in, I'm sure, is you're taking the group that start in multilingual, and as they do really well, you take them out of that pool of multilingual, which leaves the other kids behind instead of tracking that cohort with time.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we're interested in, or at least I'm interested in hearing about, is if you start as multilingual, how does your progress look?
Yes, I think as we look at that long-term piece, and actually I'll use the IEP piece to emphasize that. So Dr. Degree came to see me shortly after we completed the spring benchmark and started sharing, information. What happens with our students in IEPs? We start this year, 518 kids had an IEP at the start of the year. By the end of the year, it was 592. We also had new kids come in and kids who no longer needed an IEP, so they left. So to that point, students who are in the program, now it's the only group where they get removed during the year. You can exit out of multilingual, you stay in the program until the following school year. With an IEP, if you exit out, you exit out. So as we looked at that, we found you can see the comparables, that when we take those 518 kids that started here in the fall, they had really nice growth over the course of the school year. Compared to when we add in kids, it's on the negative side. So we want to report that both ways. I think that's where Dr. Sager is trying to go of, can we take these former multilingual and drop them back in? What does that data look like when they stay in? Especially in our dual program, because kids stay in the class even if they exit. So I might be a 3rd grader, I exit the Polish program, I stay in those classes through 5th grade. So I'm getting similar instruction. So that can be another way we'll dig into how we can report that out.
Just before you move on to this, so first I just want to point out free and reduced lunch. I don't know how to say this because we don't have all this data on this screen. The year over year was a slight dip in reading, 0.6%, basically, right? But I did it for math, I didn't do it for reading. If you look at the year over year free and reduced, and the year over year not free and reduced, those both increase, at least for math, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, don't look at the screen.
I don't know. Yeah, sorry, I brought it up probably too early.
Sorry. I'm almost there. So based on the question, I grabbed a couple supplemental slides. So
Sorry.
That's okay. It's just clicking through. So this is a slide of free and reduced students reading and math, blue and green, like the others. So and what you'll notice down here at the bottom is the numbers. So over time, back in the spring of 21-22, 55% of our kids, a little bit more, were free and reduced. This year, end of the year, it's 66.3%. Yet over that time, we still see the increase, but those numbers climb up. And then when we look at, the non-free and reduced, you'll see a similar pattern that we see dips. Yes, we see climbs and everything that goes with that. But when you look at the overall numbers, they don't shake out. It's not an even distribution.
Right. So my point of that was looking at the year over year for the district as a whole, you get a sense of not as much growth as what actually happened because the free and reduced category grew by more than that. And the not free and reduced category grew by more than that. But we had more free and reduced.
Yes.
So the ratio changed.
And the reality of, and I know we've talked about this, the research around free and reduced, low income, and the impact historically.
There's a reason why I always focus on that number is because research shows that is the hardest challenge in education.
Yeah. So yes, you see there's a gap, and we always talk about the gap that we're trying to close, yet we're seeing the growth over time with numbers increasing. All right, now don't look at the screen. All right, so let's go back real quick. Okay, so now we want to talk about achievement. So when we look at achievement, we've been reporting the data this way the last few times, last 3 years. This is reading, where we start, where we end. When we talk about that goal of comparing to the nation, we are right in alignment with the nation. You can see the state has consistently outperformed the district over that period of time. When I was talking about that count, there's about 6.1 million kids took this assessment in the spring for reading. So very similar pattern on that path. Appreciate seeing that piece. Then, because we've often talked about students who are below grade level, this is reading also, kids who are 2 and 3+ years below. So where do we start at the start of the year? Where are we at now? How does that compare? We're a little bit off. Didn't shrink that number down as much as we would like, but again, showing good progress. And over the course of the year, seeing kids moving into positive categories. When we talk about math, as we've talked about and even seen from some of the work across the country, our math numbers really are solid. Where we're really at the point now where we're really starting to push away from the nation and the state in regards to proficiency in achievement in math. And very similarly, when we reverse that trend the other way, we cut it in half, kids who are 2 and 3 years below grade level. So that's significant impact on kids and moving into positive areas.
Which curriculum are we further along?
So math is finishing year 3,
Okay, math.
and reading's finishing year 1.
Okay.
So it's a good assumption that as we have a pretty solid system in place, that as we get a chance to really implement it and go through that process, we'll continue to see that growth, hopefully, in reading. I think, and I always have to be careful, I want to be careful putting the spotlight on different groups, but when you add 600 newcomers to our system, the reality of kids coming from out of the country who are second language learners, you're asking a lot, especially on the reading side. Again, I think we just need the time. And I think the data shows if we have the time, it'll come. So then on the iReady side, they also have these targets of growth, typical growth and stretch growth. So the target through iReady's research is 40 to 60% of your kids hit typical growth. That's 1 year's growth. You can see this year we were at 64, pretty consistently in the 60s on the typical growth side. And then on the stretch growth side, 25th to 35th, that's where you make more than a year's growth. And again, we're right there. An area we've targeted, these numbers are great. We appreciate that. iReady tells us great job. But we also know many of those kids are 2 and 3 years below are not always hitting their stretch growth. That's the group we want to hit stretch growth. Most importantly, to close that gap. So that's definitely an area of focus for us. Again, this is reading. This is math, very similar. We've been consistently hitting those targets over time. I'm interested in, where we're at 9% in the winter to get to 32% in the spring. You can really see it. We don't often see as much growth winter to spring just because of all the disruptions with testing that occur and everything that occurs in the spring semester. So that's pretty strong data. All right, intervention, provision, and growth. So I wanted to start with the provision slide, because this is pretty, and when you step back and see it after you haven't looked at it for a while, to think that just a year ago in the fall, for math, we were able to intervene on behalf of 35% of the kids, and we end the year this year at 80%. 49% for reading, 83%. By the end of the year, 65 to 100. Now, obviously, the board approves additional staff, but our team, especially Tricia behind us, really looked at how we were allocating staff and going through that whole process, working with buildings to really trying to intervene at the highest level we can. And the reality, at least Tricia tells me, this number, we know there are interventions occurring in classrooms that don't end up in the documentation. We don't ask teachers to, hey, stop teaching so you can document things. So a lot of tier 2 interventions happen in classrooms. So that number's likely higher, but really increase that number. And thanks to the board support, leadership support to make that happen. Pretty impressive stuff.
Do we have information on absolute numbers, not just percentage-wise?
Oh, like counts?
Yeah.
We do have counts. I should probably turn the page when I go through this. Okay, so let's jump to reading. So this year we had 1,210 students by the end of the year served in reading. The interesting part, and again, I don't like to put the spotlight on things, but we added over 200 since January. So 200 additional kids were receiving interventions between after January we came back from winter break. So you could see we were able to maintain the growth we had, did not have a ton of growth in the spring, but we did add a number of kids to the process. This also helped lead to, we've identified 2 new intervention programs that we piloted in the spring and are going to roll out next year because we weren't seeing growth in some groups of kids. So we've got 2 new programs we'll train into and roll out in the fall.
Hold on, I just have a question.
Yes.
Why aren't we documenting tier 2 interventions if they're in the classroom? Like, I think about it as a teacher, you might do a tier 1 intervention and not write something down, but tier 2 and tier 3 should always be written down.
Wow, I have an extra mic.
Thanks. So I would say that there definitely are tier 2 interventions that are occurring in the classroom that are documented. It's just a little bit tougher to really hold that to true fidelity right now. As we're rolling out a lot of things with our intervention systems, we're really focusing on, do we have the right amount of interventionists? Are we allocating them appropriately? Do we have the right programs? And that definitely trickles down into the classroom. I just feel that there's less fidelity right now in the documentation of what's occurring in the classroom to what's occurring outside of the classroom with interventionists. So it is expected. I just don't know that it's 100% documented as we'd like yet.
Okay.
Thanks for being here, Tricia. All right, math. So 1,399 students were served in math over the course of the year. We added 238 since January. So again, we were able to maintain, had some growth in the spring, and really hit, again, our target is 4 percentage points. We hit 5. Panorama is our sense of belonging survey. We do this twice a year. These are the results over the last few years. I know oftentimes people will say, 59% of the kids have a strong sense of belonging. Well, for middle schoolers, that's at the 90th percentile. So the reality of that process, they have a huge database. I think it's about 2.5 million kids that take the survey. From that, then how do the kids do? What do they report? And where does that fall? So we're in a very above average and a nice place and have been very consistent across all of the last 3 years. And then one last piece, based on some questions, I wanted to provide a quick enrollment summary, kind of end of year summary, just to build some awareness. So as we dug into, and Corey was very helpful, as was Kathy Savage with this, I want to highlight this category right here. New to District 59 initial enrollment, 1,220 students over the course of the year. Now, about 700 of those are brand new kindergartners or early childhood students, but about 500 are new students in 1st through 8th grade who joined in the district. We actually have so many kids who leave and come back that I call it initial, it's just first time in District 59. But a lot of families leave and then they return. So it's a pretty big number. Also, that category next to it, the newcomers, just to highlight 325 newcomers this year. Of those 325, 279 were first year in U.S. So almost 86% of the kids. So we gained about 200 kids over the year. So even though we have a lot of new kids, there's the whole in and out piece and everything that goes with that. And the final 3 categories, when you look at the school report card this fall and you look at the district, our low income number won't be 66.3. I believe in the fall it was more like 63 point something. Those numbers grow throughout the year, and I just wanted to highlight that piece. You can see where our low income numbers are, our English language learners in each school, and our special ed numbers in each school. So just to get a kind of a picture of our schools, total enrollment, where we finished the year, students who are outplaced go to other schools. I highlighted a bunch of that at the bottom. The bolded ones are NSSCO schools. And that's it. Questions?
The one thing I forgot to ask at the beginning, the percentiles that we use to cut on are based on the national sample?
Yes. So
The current year's national.
current year, I read, so that was 6.15, I think, and 6.8 million in math. That's the percentile, and that changes each year. I will share, glad you mentioned that. iReady is changing their cut scores around percentiles. Based on their view of their data, they have not seen a recovery from the pandemic yet. So they're resetting their percentiles. So to be honest, we'll see a bump in the fall just because of the resetting. You normally cut scores go up. In this case, they will be going down, especially in math.
And I know I asked this before, are we able to somehow still see the old, because it's going to give us a false bump, right?
Yes.
Because we're
And that's why we're
doing
sharing
better
it.
than the national average and growth, and so when they adjust the cut, we're going to get an artificial bump from that. Is there a way to apples to apples that at some point? Yeah.
We'll see what we can do and almost show and honestly, as we're super transparent and of course sharing that piece that change is happening, and I've talked about how we'll adjust and build understate, because the reality as a kid this year, let's say, is at the 20th percentile in math and getting intervention, please jump in, and next year could be at the 28th percentile and technically doesn't qualify just because they changed the norms. We are not planning to change our intervention plan and kick those kids out or anything along that path, but we have to see how it comes through. But we'll look for ways to highlight and share.
So we have the raw score for each student, and we have the current distribution, right? So we can always do our own.
When we first started digging into this, Tricia actually took some of the raw data to say this is what it looks like for certain kids to build some understanding into the system.
And do we have the data based on the grade and the school?
So in the report, if we cruise down into just let me jump a few more slides. The full report starts on slide, I think the full 50-page report starts right here, and it breaks it out by school, breaks it out by grade level, all the demographic groups and everything, not really in a more pleasing visual form, but in the kind of what we've done in the past. So everything's there for you to access.
All right. And that's going to be also available to the public, right?
And this one great thing about this report, which I don't go to other board meetings or watch them, but I don't know that a lot of school districts shared this much detailed data and then share it out to the community. But yeah, this is included in the board update.
Wonderful, thank you. And a question on the at which point we are. Can you remind me at which point the tier 3 intervention starts?
Say that again. I'm
At
sorry.
which point does the tier 3 intervention starts?
So 10th, any student under the 10th percentile, is that right, Tricia? So if you're performing in the 10th percentile, you qualify for tier 3, so more intensive services.
Would it make sense to provide more services sooner versus waiting until the 10th percentile? I'm just curious because when I hear 10th percentile,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
May
I
I
think,
add?
go.
Sorry.
Please.
I just want to add that we also make decisions on moving into tier 3 intervention when we see that tier 2 intervention has not been successful over time, or when we've tried modified tier 2 interventions and we're not seeing success. That may be another cue that it's time to start tier 3. So that 10th percentile is a guideline, but it is not the only determining factor for when a student would start a more intensive intervention.
And if I can just add one more thing, the whole intent behind MTSS is to be as preventative as possible. So what's nice about screening 3 times per year is that we're able to identify kids that are struggling before it falls underneath that 10th percentile. So while we start looking at who are the kids that are falling below that 25th percentile 3 times per year, we also are meeting in between those screeners and looking at how are they doing within the classroom? Are they not successful? But at a minimum, 3 times per year, we're looking for who are all those kids that fell below, and do we have other data that suggests that there is support or intervention needed? And if so, put plans in place. Or are there kids that did not make this list that have other data to suggest? So we always want to try and find them before they get to that 10th percentile.
Okay, thank you.
Does the district have any updates regarding their partnership with Varsity Tutors?
Varsity Tutors.
Yes, so we have a partnership with them, but we are still finalizing our final SOPA agreement so that we can push it out to families. So we've been waiting for that. So we were hoping to get that out sooner, but we've been kind of hitting a bit of a wall getting that finalized. But it should be ready, and we are hoping to pilot it during the school day in some of our priority schools as an additional opportunity for intervention, as well as opening up to all families for enrichment during the year as well. So I'll keep you posted. As soon as we hear more, we will be communicating that. We had a communication ready to go, but we had to kind of hold on it because it wasn't quite ready to go yet.
I look forward to seeing that too.
And just to finish up, to all those staff members out there watching, thank you for your efforts to continue the growth of our students, staff, teachers, leaders, everyone. We appreciate it.
I just have one more question about interventions and tiered interventions and the percentile. Is there data that shows that tier 3 should be at 10 percentile, like that's where we are focusing on, knowing that they can move even if they're at the 15th percentile? But is there data that shows that that is where tier 3 is? Because I know other districts have like 25th percentile is tier 3. I just feel like we're so low in a lot of different areas, meaning grade levels behind, and we're making great growth, but it's still not enough, right? So like, why are we looking at that 10th percentile? You know, could we start looking?
Sure. I would say, tier 2 falling between the 24th and the 10th percentile, and then tier 3 at the 9th and below is pretty common practice when it comes to RTI and MTSS. So again, any student there are multiple ways that students can be identified and recommended for intervention. From this standpoint, looking at our assessment data, 3 times per year, as soon as the student falls below that 25th percentile is when we would recommend that they get supplemental tier 2 intervention. It's when that doesn't work or they're so discrepant, for example, falling below that 10th percentile, that we know they're going to need something more individualized and more intensive, more time perhaps. And that's when we kind of use that as our guideline of when it's the difference between intervention that may be successful from a supplemental standpoint, meaning connected to the classroom as much as possible, versus tier 3 and individualized. So students can be recommended for intervention in a variety of ways. This is just how we use our data 3 times per year to help guide who are the students and how intensive is the support that they need.
Thank you.
If I may follow up, when we're looking at the interventions, do we have any benchmark data? I'm just curious, and I understand that we have constraints on how many interventionists we have, and we're building out the plan to success long term, right? But I'm also curious that if we have a benchmark data, maybe from iReady or some other place, on at which point the tiers hit in other schools. And I'm not just talking about the immediate districts. Like I'm thinking, what are the top schools doing? What are the average Illinois nationwide? Same as we have benchmarks here. Just to give us more idea of long term way. I mean, if we want to be, my dream is that our district will be top 10% in the nation and in Illinois and the region. So I'd be curious how those schools are doing and what is their plan, so we can plan long term.
I'll just add that I think what's really important about any MTSS is that it needs to be localized within our context and the needs of our students. So where you'll see some fluctuations district to district is what are the resources that we have available and what are the number of students. When we're talking Tom's numbers that 1,200 students. So we are dealing with a significant amount, and these are where our students were, this isn't just a result of the pandemic. These are historical trends in our data that have been more than a decade in the making. So I think what's really important is to build our system with our local context, allocating the resources. So when you look at that provisioning chart, I think that's a really good indicator that we're maximizing the resources that we have while simultaneously building our tier 1, because we're never going to tier 2 and tier 3 our way out of the tier 1 problems. So I think we are doing everything within our system's capabilities from both ends to really maximize what we're doing. So then when you look at like our students who have been with us for 3 years and we start looking at cohorts, that's when I think we can better differentiate and really see at the classroom level, how do we get our triangle to that better balance. But that's what's taking time. And I mean, 3 years of this data is remarkable. And other districts, I think, are looking at us from an iReady perspective to find out what we're doing. Because we
completely agree. I mean,
yeah,
we
so
are
I
working
think
quite
that
well with the restraints that
we
have.
do both, right? Like, I think we are constantly, that's why the national data and the state data comparison is always included. When we looked at that Harvard educational, the scorecard, we looked at where we fell with all of our local districts, and our growth is outpacing. But we are starting from a further behind position, which is why I think we're attacking it in such, I think, a really significant and impactful way with our staff, our resources from both ends. And if we stay on this trajectory, we're going to hit our KPIs. Thank you, Tom. Excellent job. Great work, everyone.
Okay, so next up is the consent agenda. We have items 6.01 through 6.06. Does anybody want anything removed from the consent agenda? If not, can I get a motion to approve? It's been moved. Any seconds? Moved in second. Any discussion? Nikki. Okay, if not, roll call, please.
Johnson.
Aye.
Sager, aye. Chesney.
Aye.
Zach.
Aye.
Eddie. Espino, absent.
All right, motion passes. Discussion item 7.01, the disruptor, Ron, 24-25 tentative budget.
Thank you, Dr. Bresnahan, Board of Education. So just a reminder, this is the preliminary budget and guide. It's a living, breathing document that can change over time. As we know with a budget, it's like a roadmap. And I am going to walk through this. Thank you for the entire district to get some information together for this, because it is quite a budget. So the adoption process is as follows. As you see the dates, we did authorize the public display of the budget. We did put it out there July 1st. Today we're going to review that tentative budget. If there are any changes or suggestions, we're going to do what we need to do so that August 7th we can do the hearing. And then on September 11th, we were hoping we could adopt it, because we would have to submit it to ISB by October 31st. So before we begin, I'd like to discuss the fund balance. According to Board Policy 425, our policy says that the district shall maintain an aggregate no less than the 50 to 60% range in our operating funds. So that's Ed Fund, operations maintenance, transportation, and working cash. That's what we need to operate. So what we're projecting right now is our fund balance being, as of the 1st of July, and we won't get everything together until the auditors have at it, is about $125 million in our fund balance. This year, our budgeted expenses will be $152 million plus. However, again, it's the operating fund balance that is pertinent in this policy. So we'll break that down through this presentation. Again, no less than 50 to 60% range, and we are currently at, for operating, 78.3%. So we are healthy. Every year we show the examples of the revenue sources. I don't need to go through all of them, but the one in particular that you should be aware of that is no longer up there is the COVID funding, the ESSER dollars. That's gone. We spent it. And I think we were extremely smart with it. We didn't use it necessarily on staffing. There are districts currently that did, and now they have to figure out how they're going to pay for staffing with money that they don't have anymore. So we did a good job on that. So here's our revenue sources, and my apologies if it hurts your eyes with the blue. But as you can see, we're very heavily reliant on local funding. This year would be 81.1%. And state and federal, state it's 11.2% and the federal is 7.7%. So here are some of our highlights. Again, 81.1% of our revenue is probably be coming from local sources. The way it goes out is that the tax levy, what we receive is 55% of last year's levy, and then we get 45% of this coming year's levy. Because they merge when it comes to the current fiscal year. So that would be about 3.4% of our CPI. That's how we determine where we're going to be at. We do have major corporate personal property replacement tax reductions. If you can see there, it's quite a hit that we're anticipating. The state initially said 28% of our dollars would be reduced, and then they said, oops, our mistake. We miscalculated. It's going to be more of at least 40. So thank you, Springfield, for that. FY23 there, for example, we received $15.3 million in corporate personal property tax dollars. And this year we're projecting $6.5 million. Reason being for that dip is because, again, the ESSER, the COVID dollars are gone. So when districts received that money, when other municipalities received that money, they spent it. By spending it, they really got things going for corporations where then they were making money even during COVID. Now they're not making as much money, and part of the formula for a CPPRT is that it's what you take in. It's not necessarily how much your property value is, like a resident would receive. So that's where we're at. That's why it's what it is. I expect it to bounce back up, not necessarily to 15.3, but we do have the tech park. I mean, that's huge. I can't stress that enough. So I think 6.5 is very conservative, but it could be even more down the line. Again, kudos to the district because we have school fees that remain at $0. If you look at some of our other neighbors, they still charge. And then our interest earnings are going to be increased. So in fiscal year 23, we received approximately $400,000 in interest from our investments. But we've been working on laddering it over a 5-year period, over a 5% increase, a 5% interest. So now that $400,000, we've taken that reserves, we've laddered it over 5 years, and we're projecting to have at least $3 million in revenues just based on that. As for the state can be useless when it comes to funding. It is 11.2% of our revenues, but there's what we call evidence-based funding. It's a formula from ISB. We are a Tier 4 district, which means that we receive 0.1% of any new state funding because we are so reliant on local funding. It's based on how much district resources you have, as well as an adequacy target as to what the state believes you should have. So we receive a little over $12 million from that. Other places receive far more dollars that they need help. They don't have as much local. So we don't worry so much about this. Other thing is state grants and categorical grants. The state tends to like to not pay its bills. So for example, transportation. They would say, well, our transportation is a $10 million budget. The state would say, okay, well, we'll pay 80% of it, right? So we'll give you 8 million. But lately they've been prorating it, saying, we can't afford it, so we're only going to give you 5 or 4, and then we'll just call it even. So if you try that with your mortgage, let me know if it works, but the state has been doing that. There's nothing we can do to be honest with you. It's just how it is. So federal, 7.7% of your revenues. They're flat right now until the actual dollars are approved. Again, ESSER dollars are no longer available, and they are taking hits in money away from some of our title funding, and that's happening across the board. So just something to keep an eye on as well. So this was a nice little comparison of revenues over time from fiscal year 19 to 23, just to kind of explain, it's kind of like a little story for you. Our local sources, the percent of what we rely on is, again, we have a lot of, not just residential, but the commercial. If you notice, though, the federal sources went from 6.4% up to 7.7%. That's some of the COVID funding, which means we didn't have to rely as much on state sources. The state knew that the feds were giving us money, and so you saw, an issue with more proration. So. Also, one thing of note, which again the district is blessed with, is we do have a very heavy commercial industrial base. Cook County, typically 64.2% of their tax dollars come from residential. District 59 is 41% as of FY22 from the numbers that we were getting together. Again, a lot of it has to do with the industrial park. That number, the residential, went up to 41%. In the past, it was actually 35%. But when Cook County did their triennial assessments, they said, okay, well, guess what? Homes are going to be increased in value. As a result, you're going to pay more. So that's why you see it this way. Here are also expense categories. As you can see, there's nothing really necessarily new with this. A lot of it you're going to see is contracted services and equipment. And again, you'll see why that's the case. It's going to be more construction. And here's why the expense categories, this isn't going to happen every year. Salaries are only about 53% of our budget, but it's because if you look at the equipment and purchase services, those are the construction projects that we're looking at. So when you look at equipment being almost 11%, and then the purchase services being another 11%, that's already 22% of your budget. That's why you see such a high $150+ million budget this year. It's not anything that's going to happen from year to year. So, excuse me. So the expenses, here we go. Staffing and salaries are based on the contracted and negotiated agreements, including resignations and retirements. We work closely with human resources, and we really appreciate their data, because then we find out the resource allocation that is approved by the board and how things are going with hiring, and it helps us a ton. Benefits, we actually really held still. We had an insurance committee that really kind of pushed so that you can't find another place that had a medical PPO with a 0.5% increase, and that was it. We worked very hard on that. We had to take things away from what we would have perceived in terms of the state and coverage, but it worked. The medical HMO was an 8.9% increase. Dental was flat. Workers' comp is an 8% increase, but that is projected to be even less in the next couple of years. The state, for TRS, for the retirements, that's a 9%. And then what little known fact is that if you take funding from grants, from federal grants, the state then says, you're spending money on that for staffing. So instead of the 9% TRS, which is the retirement system for teachers, we're going to charge you more as kind of like a, I wouldn't say penalty, but they want to try and cover their bills too. So that's why they charge you a little bit more. And that's a 10.34% increase, that our percent total. So that's what we deal with if we do put salaries and grants. As for the Ed Fund, Food service is going to be a 3.25% increase overall, which is it's a great bargain for us compared to what we've seen across other districts. Other purchase services line items. So we're looking at, again, some operations, field trip costs. The district has been very, frankly awesome in being able to pay for field trips for students, which is kind of unheard of. We are continuing to expand our music and art programs, and the supplemental instructional materials that you have seen and why we increase with our scores, we work together on to ensure that that actually occurs with dollars that we have. As for operations and maintenance, there is equipment involved in that. We're always trying to increase refresh our vehicles. Doesn't always happen. And then Brentwood, you're still going to have to, you don't just build the building and leave the classrooms empty. You still have to get things together for it, such as other items and furniture. So just an FYI. Transportation, it's only a 2.5% increase, and they were great last year, Safeway, so they need to continue that. Debt service, you'll see that. That was the 2020 bond. It's going to retire in fiscal year 28. We're looking at the IMRF rate. I got to get that finalized because that's what's given to us from the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. Sorry, that's a mouthful. And then the capital projects fund is the one that's really going to, you're going to see. The Brentwood addition, we did still budget the full amount of it, even though some of the costs may flip into FY26. We just want to be prepared. Also, we are going to talk about the ELC, their HVAC system that they've had a lot of issues with. We have a potential solution with it, and we have the money for it budgeted in this budget. So that's why you'll see the number be higher than normal. As for the bond payments, I just like to show this and again reemphasize that all of the work that we're talking about is not has nothing to do with bonds. We are not even talking about that. We're working on paying this one off. So by March 1st of 2028, it will be paid off. But this shows over time what a bond does. You see, once a year we pay, what actually just goes to the principal, but we pay twice a year on interest. So if you see this is just kind of an FYI, not only to the board, but to the public. And just so you know, this is non-callable, which means that we cannot pay it off early. Otherwise, you just can't. It's not how you do it. So if it was callable, you could. So the capital projects that we've already put in here, again, these are estimated costs. For example, the Brentwood addition being upwards of $15 million. I don't anticipate many contingencies or issues because you will hear about that if there was. The Early Learning Center, the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning is actually really, really important here. It's a $5.1 million cost approximately. So what that would do is you would be getting rooftop units just like every other building. We're getting out of the business of what the air conditioning and heating system is currently. It would also, we'd have cooled ice storage coolers that 214 is currently doing as well. So they're big tubs. You can put them underground. You can put them on the back, wherever. They do come with an energy investment tax credit of upwards of $1 million at the very, they think you can get us more. And then the cool part about this is that there's a demand control ventilation system that they can put in there. So it's 65 systems, like mini systems in each room. And what it does is it measures the carbon dioxide. So that's how it determines how the temperature should be. So once that air conditioning can kick in, it's only because that one in particular system, there's 65 of them, like 65 rooms. It saves money because you're not air conditioning an entire building. You're dealing with one particular area. And it's just, in comparison, think about your house. If you want to turn on your air conditioner to, like, say, cool down the entire floor, it hits the entire floor. It spreads out. This doesn't do that. It goes by classroom. So it's to the needs of the class. And that was an additional $700,000 that we felt after the tax investment credits would pay for it. It would be a great opportunity, and that's something that we'll talk about during discussion. So, again, with this budget, before we go into it, I wanted to point us out to remember that 50 to 60%, what the board is looking at. Not all of these are operating, but currently the fund balance, let's say we had no more money for the coming in this year. Our ad fund, we have $64 million in it approximately. So of the budget right now, we have 62.5% of it covered already in the bank. Operations and maintenance, we have almost a year's worth already, 93.5% at the end of this year. Transportation, we wouldn't have to take anything from the state, from local, from anyone, and we're covered 100% plus. And then our IMRF Social Security there, it's $5.6 million that we have in our fund balance. That's 141% covered already in the fund balance. So that's something I'd like us to think about when you see this budget, and it explains why you'll see some numbers that may be in red, but it's not a bad thing because the dollars get reallocated to things such as curriculum, right? Or investment in our buildings and our facilities. Overall, our operating funds, we're looking at about $95.7 million, which again is at 78.3%. So, operating funds, you'll see the ed fund, we're looking at adding another $3.3 million to it. O&M, we're looking at taking a little bit of that money and having a reduction because we, again, remember how much we had already. We only have $10 million in it. In transportation, the same thing. We have almost 100%, we have a little over 100% fund balance there. So we're willing to say, let's reduce that a little bit and again, reallocate those dollars to the ed fund. And that's why you'll see the operating fund, the operating total, which the state, that's what it cares about, would be in the black at $285,558. Part of the reason why is because we're taking that money and we're moving it to the 60 fund, which is the construction fund, so that we can continue to look at improvements in our facilities across the board without taking out a bond. Do you have any questions about the numbers so far?
So high level numbers, next year, just operating, getting through the year, we're going to spend 123 million. Or we're going to bring in 123 million, we're going to spend, so we're going to be positive about 300,000.
Correct.
And the number you threw out before, the 152 million that we're actually going to spend next year, that difference, that other 30 million is coming from other funds like the
non-operating, correct. So the construction, the IMRF, the bond payment. Yeah.
Okay, so when you told us at the beginning we had 125 million in our operating fund after this year, basically, right? Or at the start of next year?
The start of this year.
The start of this year.
Because you're going to see it'll be a decrease.
So that's going down by about 3 million.
Yeah.
Got it. So we're funding all that construction.
Yep.
And we're only going down by 3 million in this.
Well, that's that operating though.
Right.
So let me go through the non-operating, and you'll see that, and then it'll make more sense because you see right now the difference. Because I also have done something over time. Dr. Brosnahan and I were talking about just communicating here from year to year. This is what we're looking at, and it paints a really good picture that we've worked on. So just when we see that, you'll see. So like non-operating, here you go. Now this is the number that nobody likes to see, right? Debt service, which is the bond. IMRF, Social Security, that was the one where we had over $5 million in it already. So you want to bring that down. Part of the reason why you want to bring down funds like that is because when you have funds that are over 100%, there tends to be a lot of tax objections, and then the district actually can have its funds frozen. So you might as well do it. The Capital Projects Fund, we have, I believe, I have it in here, it's like 18 or 19 million already. And that money is meant to do stuff like build, right? That's why you'll see we're going to bring in about 4.8 million out of it, but we're going to spend, plan on spending 21.3 million. And that's why you see that negative 16.5. It's like a rainy day fund for like your roof, for plumbing, for any sort of disaster. This is what we had this for. So that's the Brentwood. That's the HVAC system. That's anything that we need day-to-day operations with, not just construction, but if there's something that happens in the building. A couple of years ago, we had a flood at homes. That's where that would come from.
So do you have what that balance will be in that? Okay.
Yes. So the projected ending fund balances are right here. So if you see the ed fund was going to be an increase of 3.3. Operations and maintenance will, there's a $500,000 decrease there. Debt service, we don't levy for the debt service. That's what the county does. The county gives us the money. So it's nothing we can do about that. So that's a $247,000. But transportation, we're going to take a hit on for that. But look again, we're at $9.5 million, give or take, in our fund balance. So we're going to bring it down to 6.9 million. Our IMRF, it's going from 5.6 down to 3.2, and we'll still have about 100% fund balance on that. The capital projects one's the interesting one. So that's 18.5 mil. It will be down to 1.9 because we're going to be bringing in revenues for it. So you'll see that 16.5 million. But again, that's assuming all those expenses happen in the same fiscal year, which I'm guaranteeing you they're not going to. Because again, once there's the punch list and everything else, we hold out on a certain percentage of funding so that you don't just give the workers the check and then say, hey, have at it. You have to hold back on some of it, and that's what we'll do.
So can I ask real quick, how did we get 18 point? Were we just saving for a long time? How do we get to that 18.5? And then with maybe what Wold is doing and what we're looking to do in the future, how do we get back to that so we can fund that without any?
So part of that story does end in this slideshow. A lot of it had to do with we did a good job with taking any sort of excess expenses or revenues, and then we would allocate it to the 60 fund. So during COVID, for example, you saw the 20 operations and maintenance. Our schools weren't running at full support. So we said, okay, well, we're only spending 7, but normally it's 10. So that's 3 alone. Let's put it in the 60 fund. So some of the ed fund, we said, you know what, let's move that to the 60 fund. So what we did was we literally just kind of built up the little nest egg in the last couple of years. It can still happen with the plan that we're going to talk about shortly, because you'll see, just like you said, there is going to be decisions that we'll have to make in terms of, it's again 50 to 60% fund balance, and we're at 78. I don't like to say deficit. That's not my feel, but it's a planned spend for us to look at and see. We have all this tax dollars in the bank that people have paid, like fellow board members, and it's kind of a travesty that it's sitting there.
So can I ask then, 122 million in expenses in the operating, what, I saw that the CPI in there, is that assuming taxes increased by the same rate as the CPI, or is that assuming no increases? What are we assuming with?
The CPI would be like with the bill increases as well as with property as well.
So I'm saying, does the budget, looks balanced on the operating budget, right? So
correct.
What is that assuming we increase the levy by? Is what I'm at.
That's going to be that CPI number.
It's like 3%. Because I just got my tax bill and it says District 59 charged me $180 more this year, so I'm just conscious of that. Does it also include the $3 million in interest we hope to make?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where that $3 million, give or take, most of it's going to be in the capital project fund. That's where we've been putting it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be in that $122 million operating budget.
You're right. It wouldn't be in the operating. Correct. It wouldn't be necessarily in the operating budget. It would be more in the non-operating.
Okay.
Correct. I get what you're saying. Yes. And that's the fund balance over time. If you look at it, that even includes the bond that was taken out. That was in the amount of, I think it was 26 million, give or take, back in 2020. But we've been pretty consistent. Now you're seeing with Brentwood happening, and then with the ELC, the situations, I mean, the major issues it's had there, you'll see a dip in that fund balance composition, and I'll show that it's in one of these next slides. But again, a lot of it's the ed fund we have the money for. We just got to be very conscious of what we spend in terms of projects from year to year, just like any other district. You can't just buy everything at once.
So it definitely alludes to the fact that we need a long-term planned world, right, coming in. And my fear is that, they'll come in and say we need whatever, 5, 10 different projects, 20 or 10 million each on average. Looking at how quickly the fund is growing, that's not something that can be done in even in 10 years. So I think we need to start thinking how else, if there is a extreme need for big capital projects, how do we get to the fact that we need to finance it and do everything we can to avoid any hit to taxpayers?
Absolutely. And that's where we're going to, that strategic spending, just like Mr. Sesney's like, you're right. Like, it's something where we're going to have to look, and once Wold comes back with their information, we work and it's about prioritizing. And it can be done. It's not like we can just say, let's just do it all at once. The minute you do that with 15 buildings, you're in trouble.
So what will it, so after FY25, oh, you have that, right? So, okay.
Yeah. Actually, I also wanted to show you the examples of just operational revenues and expenses over time first, and then we'll go into what you're talking about, Mr. Johnson. I just wanted to make sure you guys saw that we always find a way to make it work. Even if we get an excess in revenues, we've been putting it into that 60 fund for capital projects. It's not necessarily just for buildings. It's to make sure that the curriculum is enhanced, right? So when you see what Wold is doing, it's an educational facility study. It helps with the entire well-being of a child, right? And that's what we're going to keep doing, is put it into 60 fund if we have, because right now, we have a pretty solid fund balance, but it's about planning it out so you can keep it strategically spent rather than just kind of doing it at a whim.
And just to clarify, we have a nice fund balance today. Next year, it's not going to be as fun.
Correct.
And 2 years from now, as well. So that's why I'm already cautious.
Thank you. Yeah,
so I don't know if anybody. So why did we bond? Was it for this building we took those bonds out?
No.
What was it for?
Roofing, I believe it was. It was just before my time. Yeah, I wasn't here for that one.
Okay. I'm curious why we did that versus. It doesn't matter now, but versus using some of this.
We're best foot forward. Let's keep moving. Okay, there we go. So this is what kind of you guys are talking about, right? So for fiscal year 25, you see that we're going to receive approximately $134 million, what we're guessing conservatively. But you see the expenses. Again, though, it's a one-time thing. You have those projects inside that that expense piece. You have a $15 million Brentwood. It may not be $15 million, and it may be into the next year. The ELC HVAC system, they say $5.1 million. I've already talked to them about, hey, how much less will it be? And they guarantee it will be. Doesn't mean anything until it happens, though. These are all conservative estimates, but you see going forward, just to keep for, let's just say we're not doing crazy projects, we can still balance. So just so you know that, but again, it's going to take an effort as a team for us to plan this out. And also, just like what the team has mentioned, see, those are fund balance now. Fiscal year 25, the projection is going to be $107 million, down from 125-ish, right? Still healthy today. And that's where the planning comes in. And that's where WOLD is extremely important, because they're going to identify things that we may not even have to do. There's such a thing as wants versus needs. So that's something that we just have to keep in the back of our mind. So, long-term plans. First of all, it's about the kids. So we're talking about an evolving curriculum that has made major gains, as you saw from Mr. Ludloff. A lot of it has to do as well with the facilities. You need to make sure that they are welcoming. They're like exactly what WOLD is doing. And so from there, WOLD study is going to prioritize district needs, but it's not their choice, right? It's us. It's the experts in this room, as I could quote some of my favorite people. And then we update the assumptions as they change, because things can change. You saw, for example, and I hate saying this, but the CPPRT dollars, you saw that big slash. I don't think we're going to get that little of an amount. I think we'll get more, but I would look like a fool if I told you otherwise, right? You'd be more happy with me saying, oh, we made $1 million more. The district is in great shape, but it's just making sure we made a blueprint out of Brentwood in conjunction with the experts, and now utilizing that information for the next buildings. It's simple, but it's not sometimes. So
I like the conservative approach. I also like anything that we end up saving, like you mentioned, trying to at least earmark that for something so it doesn't get needlessly spent on something else. And if we don't need it all, then I assume the step up in revenues is assuming tax raises every year, right? Of some sort, maybe like CPI from the past years. So I maybe one thing that I would like to see, just for my, and I don't know how far back you can go, what that fund has looked like going backwards for historical perspective. Like, are these increases in line with what people are used to, or are, I don't want to be responsible for making people's property taxes unaffordable.
I totally understand. If you even noticed, Cook County did make a major blunder with some of the taxes. If you saw, I think it was in the Tribune, somebody got like a $30,000 tax bill from South Chicago, and again, that's what we're dealing with. And then they do it triennially. So your house one day is $300,000, the next year it's going to be $375,000. We can work with that, though.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys like to see, or if there's anything you?
But we ask for a certain dollar amount. So if their home value goes up, we still get the same tax value.
Correct.
The percentage we're charging just looks lower.
It does. Absolutely. And that's where the commercial is so valuable, because it really takes away that burden. I know the Alexian brothers, the hospital, they were taking that off the books because they became a private institution. That was going to take a big hit too for taxpayers. I think it was like $20 million. So, but that's why we keep an eye on it. And just as an aside, we do use an attorney still to fight for tax reductions for the district when it comes to commercial properties in certain areas, because it's not fair for residents to have to shoulder that burden. Anything else?
Yeah, can we have access to this PowerPoint?
Yes.
Thank you.
So real quick information on that bond question that was raised. So the bonds specifically paid for a portion of the administration center, renovations at Devonshire and Friendship Junior High, and some capital projects across the district, such as updating school roofing.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you, Dr. Brissan.
I'm doing some research. I was trying to find some info. I know our website has some info, but there was also, I believe we abandoned that. There's a board resolution I'm seeing from 7/10/17, where that went away. So we'll have to do some, I know our website had information out there, but in the end, for this building, I believe that was abandoned, the bond sale.
Oh, it went out. Yeah, because it did say that those would be paid off by 2025. So that must have been sooner than when the actual bonds went out.
Yes, I believe the bonds we're talking about is related to life safety.
Yeah, right.
From 2020, if I found the right resolution.
There was the other roof. I believe you're right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. 7.02 is the policy from press update discussion, which we had. Everything's the same as, okay, got it. All right, we can skip over. Anybody have anything? 7.03, the ELC HVAC.
So again, bringing this back up, it's the ELC has been unreliable in terms of its heating, ventilation, and air conditioning ever since it was opened. It's a system that brings the air into the building, and then we have such extreme weather temperatures here in Illinois that it doesn't work. I mean, let's just say it that way. So the maintenance of it, some of our guys, Justin McDonald, for example, he lives at the ELC fixing it often. The learning environment has been disrupted, and for our students, they shouldn't have to deal with that. So we've looked at an alternative, which I just mentioned. The costs after tax incentives equate to $5.1 million. Again, it's in the budget that you've just seen, and I really recommend it. I think it'd be a big win for the students there.
Yeah, so the new system is rooftop units that are similar to the ones at other buildings, right?
Correct.
Because the concern is that the current system is some sort of heat pump system that does not function well in our temperature area. And so it's not that there's a huge operating cost to try and keep it running, it's that it doesn't work. Because when you go there in the winter, you'll see preschool kids with their coats on inside the building, and they'll have box heaters in the rooms. So it's something that needs to be addressed. This is not, it's not like you can just keep repairing.
Correct. Thank you, Dr. Sager. Yeah, and you know what, Mr. Tiarena did put together some numbers at one point. It was between $90,000 and $100,000 that we spent in 1 year just to fix it, which is pretty absurd.
I mean, you can do that for a long time for $5.1 million, but it's also that fix doesn't keep it running.
Correct.
It's down.
There are a lot of Band-Aids because it is going out and it's heating and cooling on a consistent basis since before our time.
Yeah.
Even.
It would consist of, and this is why I apologize for throwing it in discussion so quickly here to action next month, but there was a lead time on the chillers, and they'd have to gut the entire building to fix it. That 5.1 million is all in, everything getting fixed, all like the work, labor, and then some.
So I understand that typically when people put in the heat pump systems, it's to save money, new technology and all. Would there be any benefit to having a hybrid system on basically what are we planning to do while keeping this? And I'm saying it up loud so that I know it's not, but I want to make sure that everybody is aware.
No, Mr. Chesney, that's a good question. We did talk about that with Train. Part of it is we didn't want to be in another situation where when we asked them how many districts have done something like that, and they can only think of one, and that's their test district. The minute I heard the word test, I flinched. Where we do know that the rooftops are reliable.
And when they have those other districts that use them, it is not Chicagoland. It is
Correct.
Areas where the temperature is much more. It doesn't get as cold and it doesn't get as hot.
The other,
more stable rain.
And the other piece is they do not think they could finish the work within just that time frame that we needed it done. But that's a good question. Thank you for.
Any other questions?
Will there be any disturbance to the current preschoolers with this construction? Okay.
It would happen as soon as they leave, so it'd just be a summer project.
Next summer, obviously.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else? Good, thank you. Action items. We have 8.01, which is the adoption of policies from Press Update 114. These we previously went over. Does anybody have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve the press policy updates.
Any second? Moved in second. Any discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Sager, aye. Chesney,
Aye.
Zach.
Aye.
Eddie,
Aye.
Espino absent. Johnson.
Aye. All right, motion passes. And then 8.02, the approval of the District 59 Education Foundation donation. This one I think we should read if anybody wants to. I can't see that far.
I'll go for it. I'll make the motion. Be it resolved that on the 10th day of July 2024, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education approves the donation from the District 59 Education Foundation to the Empowerment Fund totaling $2,000. The donation is targeted for Mi Casa Su Casa, which will help offset the cost of purchasing new mattresses and bed frames for CCSD59 families. Be it further resolved that the superintendent shall communicate to the District 59 Education Foundation in writing expressing the appreciation of the members of the Board of Education, and that this donation shall be listed in the official minutes of this meeting.
Second that.
All right, no discussion, but thank you to the Education Foundation as always. Dr. Sager?
Chesney,
Aye.
Zach.
Aye.
Eddie,
Aye.
Espino absent. Johnson.
Aye.
Sager, aye.
All right, motion passes. Okay, 9.0, reports of the Board of Education. Did you have your thing this month or no?
No, without school in session, we didn't really
Okay.
have too many updates, so we'll reinstate that in our August meeting.
Mr. Chesney?
I don't have anything to report this time.
Nikki?
I attended the end of the summer LEAP session at Devonshire this last week. I don't remember what last week, and it was really great to see the students who had worked on the elective classes that they had chosen. The introduction to acting group was especially impressive. A bunch of kids who got up in front of the entire group, including a bunch of strange adults, and did acting exercises and repeated poems they had memorized. It was really impressive to see the students working on something they were interested in, and my understanding is they also get interventions as part of that program as well. So it was really good.
And to see junior high kids excited to be in summer school is very rare. So kudos to our summer school staff, our leaders, so many people who put in a lot of work to make it happen. It was really, really remarkable.
I have just one thing. So to mention that Mr. Mancia resigned from the Board of Education. So I just want to take a moment to thank him for his time and everything that he put into his position, all he did for the district and the children of the district. So with that, we put out the press release. We said we'll let the public know about additional information on how we will fill his position. So that will be coming out shortly. And just to summarize, it will go out for anybody who wants to apply for the first time. Anybody who has already applied just has to let us know that they would like to be considered again if you applied for the position that Mardell, yes, that Mardell had. So you wouldn't have to reapply or resubmit anything. Just let us know that you're interested again, and then we will go from there. Is that all right? Okay. I don't think we have any informational items.
I'm getting updated information as we speak. So just to clarify on the bond issue, thank you. Did Janet leave? She was here earlier. Janet sent me clarification. So in February of 2020, the Board of Education approved the issuance of general obligation limited tax school bonds not to exceed $30.65 million. Those bonds funded the identified health life safety projects within the capital improvements and projects plan, which were intended to conserve the health, safety, and general welfare of students and staff. Each district worked with an architect to identify projects and submit the health, life, safety proposals to the state board. Projects then were identified. So it was replacing full and partial roofs at 9 schools and HVAC systems in 13 schools. Window replacement was also planned at several schools. So
thank you.
I think that is the definitive answer.
Good. All right. Any other
I just want to say, I know I'm going backwards, but I just want to say publicly, I've said this to Robert privately. Whoever replaces Robert will have huge shoes to fill. He was fantastic on the board, in my opinion. I think he is smart and kind and always kept kids at the center of all of his decisions. So I really look forward to the process of getting a new board member. And I really want to thank Robert publicly for all he has done for us and for the kids of this district. So Robert, I hope you're not watching. I hope you're doing something really fun. But if you are, thank you so much for your dedication to our kids and to all of us.
You're here.
Here, here.
Okay, and no closed session for after the meeting, so if we could just get a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, roll call.
Second was
Nikki.
Zach.
Aye.
Eddie.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Sager. Aye. Disney.
Aye.
All right, meeting's adjourned.